Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, it's time to put the Loom of Fate together. I love that there's so many moving pieces together. For one, it's like Mick trying to spend time with his daughter. He has the weekend, but she doesn't want to spend time with him. And he's like, all right. And he shows, and it's like the wave, and she's like, whoa, what's that? He's like, oh, it's a time machine. And she's like, wait, what? Hops aboard, and he's smiling like, yeah, I got her. I knew that impressed her. Because at first I was wondering, did you just do that by accident, not realizing it was going to get her attention? Or was it just like, oh, she's happy now? But I think it was like he did it on purpose. Whatever the case may be. They're on board and everything. Then I love that conversation between Constantine and Astra, because Astra's like, oh, you're the only one that's happy I'm on this ship. And he's like, to be fair with this team, as long as you stop trying to kill them on a weekly basis, you become best friends. And it's like, that is kind of an interesting perspective you end up having. So I thought that was interesting. But it's like, hey, time to weave it all together. And so also at the same time, Gary's got Gary Jr. And it's like, oh, the dog is not shipbroken. It's his emotional support animal. And it's like, nah, he's got signed paper and everything because he's going to therapy. He's like, his going to hell kind of traumatizing. To be fair, Gary's been through a lot that I'm sure therapy would help him, especially like the unicorn biting off his nipple coming back and being evil, that whole shebang bang being evil. Didn't he actually talk about that? Becoming evil and going to therapy? Isn't that where that actually started? Maybe he referenced, I feel like I vaguely remember him referencing that earlier on in the season. Maybe he did, I don't remember. But regardless. So, and I like when Charlie's like, all right, let's do this. Because I love that it's literally an argument. So who goes first? And it's like, Astra's like, oh, my mom. And Zari's like, no, Bayrod. And it's like, okay. So Constantine sides with Astra, Nate sides with Zari, but Ava's like, oh, no more bickering. So everyone's going to get the term. Sarah's in a coma, so she gets to go first. I love, like, it's like everyone's got their reason to need this, but it's like, obviously for Charlie, it's like Bayrod goes first, and it's like, well, it's also because you and Bayrod are close. There's a relationship there, so I can understand kind of why, whether she'll admit that or not, that, And so it was really neat. I never actually looked into it, what a loom actually looked like, because I didn't think about it too much, and because I was thinking like some like instrument or something is what I immediately thought of, but then it started weaving together like that when she's doing it, which is so badass seeing it kind of construct. I'm like, wait, it's like, as in, is the loom like legitimately just a tapestry? It's like, as in like the tapestry of fate? Isn't that what that is? Or maybe the loom is just that, like the spirit itself is the loom, and then like the tapestry is created when the strings go through it. Or maybe, like I said, maybe it's all the same thing. Like I said, I never looked into what a loom was, but I was like, isn't that just a tapestry of fate? It is interesting because she was trying to bring Bayrod back, but it's like his strings are so tangled. Because it's a complicated mess either way, because it's like Bayrod's fate being what it is now, and Zari's fate, like so much has changed because of time, all the time travel, but also like he was dead in one existence and now he's alive again because of all the time travel shenanigans. So tries to use it, but she can't because her sisters are usually there for her. So it's like, the fact is she's never done this on her own. And she's like, oh yeah, Ashley, you want to try? You'll burn up from the inside. So I was like, okay, so what are we going to do? Ava goes checking on Sarah, and Sarah wakes up, and I'm like, hey, Sarah's awake. I was like, I didn't expect you just to casually wake up. Oh, she's blind. I was like, okay, this is interesting. But when she touches Ava, she sees a vision. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, this power stuff is nuts. And rather than kind of confronting it, I guess because for Sarah, she kept just trying to think like, oh, like, this is just trauma from like waking up from the coma and everything. Because she's like, no, this can't be the case of like people being dead. So time and time again, Constantine asked. And then eventually Charlie asked, because it's like, you are shrugging it off like it's not. It's like, you are not only the paragon of destiny, you literally looked at a god's real form and you survived. And that's a big thing too. Like, why is she blind now? Why wasn't she blind before? Why did it take a while? But like, we saw instances of her power starting to develop like last episode. So now we're getting a full scale of like, now she's starting to have visions and she's seeing everyone dead on the ship. And it's like, wait, what? That's not making any sense. And it's like, because obviously for Ava, it's hitting her hard. Like, wait, she's like, you mean dead in like 50 years or wearing what I'm wearing right now? And then like Sarah touches her outfit and it's like, option number 2. So there's that going down. Then there's the whole thing of like, wait, the rings are missing because Gary found the cage because he was cleaning up Gary Jr.'s poop and everything. So while that's going down, it's a, Okay, who took the rings? Well, none other than it had to be Astra. Literally, everyone thinks it's Astra because she even tried to manipulate. She's like, Zari, because I love their like, it had to be Astra. And she was like, no, there's no guarantee it was Astra behind all of this. And the fact that, well, because they were at first like the killer had to be Astra. It's like, no, there's no guarantee. She helped us out of hell. Like, yeah. Then it's like, oh, the rings are missing. It has to be Astra. Now, there's no guarantee. Zari's like, the fact of the matter is Astra just, no, it was before that. It was like Astra tried to manipulate me into, and I like that because she tried to be like, oh, like maybe Charlie just needs a warm up. The fact of the matter is bringing my mother back so it's not as complicated as your brother. Then bring your brother. It's like, oh, all right. I was like, is Zari buying it? It was like, no. Zari's like, oh, Astra thinks I'm stupider than I am. It's like, no, I got this. I figured it. It's like, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Because I was worried that maybe Zari would fall for it, but it's like, because because I'm curious, because I think the moment she brings her moms back, she's saying she's just gonna bounce. It's like, you're not going anywhere without that loom. I guarantee you. Like being able in hell, being able to control fate itself, a cosmic god ability like that, you're not gonna let that just slip through your fingers. Like so she was always gonna plan to take it, I'm sure. But regardless. So they end up locking her up, but the only person who believes her is John. But then Astra being like, I should have never believed you. And he was like, really? Did you ever believe in me? Or was I just the only option you had? So he's the only one that's willing to give her the belief where no one else is. And it's like, oh, yep, the ship has been sabotaged. And Nate has been called upon by Mick because it's like, oh, like my daughter, she's working on stuff and she needs a historian. And it's like, yeah, it's me. And it's like, and you could also call me Steel because, and he steals up and knocks on his hand. And she's like, holy crap, this is like she's like, you're like the coolest professor I've ever met. He's like, that's probably most likely true. Because it was like the moment because it's like, I think from time to time, like, Nate doesn't always get his time to shine about the fact is that he is the historian. Because I feel like that's kind of taking a back seat for the fact is that he is like the historian buff. I also love it's like, okay, like Sarah being like, I'm the one who has to fix the ship because no one knows how to fix a ship other than me. Well, except for Ray and Jax. And then what was it? It was Stein and then, Rip, then Stein. And Bayrod's pretty good, but none of them are going to walk through the door. I'm like, oh, talking about all the people that are either dead or gone. Literally only 2 people on that list have not died. Jax and Ray obviously left, but it's like everyone else on that list she brought up is dead, which is kind of depressing as hell to think about. Like, which is kind of crazy to think about all that the legends have been through. Trip down memory lane just in that sentence alone. Depressing ass memory lane, but memory lane nonetheless. What I also liked is that conversation between Zari and Astra, and she kept being like, oh, I get it. John didn't give you the response you thought, because she's like, oh, you think I'm manipulative, but look at you. You got Nate wrapped around your finger, but you had John wrapped around your finger. She's like, no, I didn't. So it's like, it's interesting because it's almost like Astra kind of sees, I guess, a little bit of herself in Zari, which even like, because last episode kind of sets up some like, oh, Constantine and Zari, maybe? Like, it seemed like it set up some stuff like that, but we never kind of went through, especially when Constantine was like, yeah, I'm going to need someone to help me go through research. And he was looking at Zari, but Zari's like, I'm not going anywhere until Bayrod's back. So I just thought, it's just like, oh, okay. I guess kind of nipping that in the bud, at least for now. But maybe there will be, like, the fact is that Astra kind of brought that up, made me think, like, okay, that will kind of become a plot point. But even the fact is Astra tries to use that against her, I thought was kind of, interesting in the long run. Obviously, like, Mick trying to get snacks, trying to do the fatherly thing, but Gary's like, oh, I'll tell you all about fatherly advice. I'm like, why are you talking about fatherly advice? But I guess he's more so talking from the advice of like his perspective of like always working underneath people, like, oh, Pete, well, I think it more so probably had to deal with Gary Jr., I'm assuming, but it's just like the way he was talking about the fact is like, oh, knowing in your heart that, you did good, whether they'll actually even think about giving you gratitude. It almost seemed like him talking about every person he's ever worked under, whether it be like, Ava or Constantine. It seemed like he was referencing that, but he was talking more from a father point of view. But even I was like, you're not a parent. What are you talking about? But it's like, I guess he was talking from the perspective of, Gary Jr. So I love the whole situation of us, like, Sarah's like, you gotta lock me up. I'm the one that's behind killing everybody. And Ava's like, yeah, Sarah's actually kind of going crazy. We gotta figure this whole thing out. Gary comes to visit. It's like, oh, you need to support animal more than I do. And it's like, oh, it's super your daughter. It's like, oh, that's awesome. And Sarah hears the dog is like, go ahead, kill him. And I'm like, wait, what? And the dog's like, yeah, kill him. And then she snaps Gary's neck, but it's like, that was her having a vision. She's like, no, get this dog away from me. It's evil. Leaves. And she hunts down Constantine and Ava about the dog, and they're like, obviously she sounds super crazy because she's like, the fact of the matter is I actually saved Gary's life because I had the vision about killing him, but then I didn't, so that proves that it's like, how can you, that doesn't make sense, Sarah, because she's saying that basically because I had this vision and I did the opposite, I was able to, you know, save Gary, so that's proof of it. It's like, but no one saw the vision, so how is that proof of, you know? But it's like, wait, where's the dog? The dog's going, all right, we're gonna have to, you know, track down the dog. And I love that Gary is with her, and he's like, okay, so I got some stuff to admit. The dog, where I got the dog from, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, where's the last place we saw Gary? I was like, you were in hell. I was like, don't tell me. He's like, and I got the dog from him. I was like, you literally got a hellhound. And I love when we get the reveal of like, he's like, yeah, the dog kept whispering stuff about Son of Sam because like, she's like, this has got to be like the weirdest thing that's happened, you know, because she was talking about like the most weird messed up thing that's happened because she was talking about her what was it, stab cast, which once again, I forgot. I'm like, I love that she does a podcast about serial killers. She's like, the messed up one I did about Son of Sam. He's like, yeah, the Gary Jr. kept barking, and that's what it sounded like. And she's like, well, yeah, because he's like, who's Son of Sam? It's like, you know, the killer that said that a dog gave him the orders. And she's like, oh, you brought Son of Sam's demon dog. At first, the moment that happened, I was like, oh, it's an encore. That's what I immediately thought, but it turned out not to be the case. But that's what I thought. I was like, dude. I was like, holy crap. And I love that, like, obviously Zari's looking through all the footage and stuff like that, you know, so yeah, and they were like, yeah, Nate was like, yeah, Sarah locked herself up because she thinks she's going to kill all of us. And I love Esther being like, is that Sarah's way of handling everything, locking people up? And Nate's kind of like, I mean, truth be told is when you look back at everything, it's like, a lot of people get locked up here. So, I mean, to be fair, you can make the argument that's literally the same thing that happens with The Flash because they lock everyone in that pipeline temporarily. So that's a whole thing. But the fact of the matter is, I love that, like, when the dog, because at first they figured out, it's like, wait, the dog's been here, because Zari's the one that unplugged the ship. Nate's the one that destroyed the what was it? The thing that kind of prints stuff. And Charlie's the one that flushed the rings, the Luma Fate. So it's like, okay, it's all on them. And then they see the dog. You're like, wait, the dog did this to us. And I even love later on when it gets into the room with them. And it's like, okay. It's like, yeah, don't listen to the thing the dog says. You know, it's like, and obviously for Zarya, it's like, it sounds like barking to me. And Nate's like, yeah, it sounds like he's telling me to kill all of you. And then it's like, he's actually bringing up some good points. I love that line. And he proceeds to attack them. But Gary has showed up to kind of like stop him, because he was able to, like, a whistle only he could hear. But it's like, oh, like, I hate hats, I hate ties, and I hate Gary. I love that. I love that literally out of anything you could hate, you hate Gary. And Gary's like, well, why? He's so heartbroken for hearing that. And so for him, he's like, I'm basically a dog of chaos. So it's like, rather than letting you just kill yourselves, I'm going to kill you myself. And he turns into his demon dog form. And I was like, that, look, he kind of reminds me a little bit of the dog. There's dogs like that in I think they're in multiple Devil May Cry games. Maybe I think specifically the ones in Devil May Cry 4 is what it kind of reminds me of. If that's what I'm thinking about the right game, I want to say, yeah, it reminds me of the dogs that can like shoot their like flamed heads. It heavily reminds me of that. But nevertheless, so a Hellhound is on the loose. They gotta track it. Sarah's able to track it by using her visions because she sees it attacks Mick, which. Let's talk about Mick's adventures with his daughter. It's like, oh yeah, because Nate's trying to make her feel better. He's like, yeah, Mick keeps the lights on and everything. The fact of the matter is, you know, because he steals stuff. And she's like, oh, right. Stealing stuff is why you got arrested and why you were missing out on most of my life. And Nate's like, damn it, Mick. It's just like, I tried to lay you up and it's just like, nah, that kind of didn't work out. But it's like, oh yeah, like, check out this. You looking at stuff on the French Revolution and stuff like, oh yeah, like Mick stole some stuff. And it's like, yeah. And I'm like, he's like, good job, Nate. Good job. And then like he eats the thing that Mick made. Actually, good work, Mick. Good job. And I'm just like, I love that little moment, congratulatory like moment he had. But Mick showed off all. I love that he literally has a treasure room. It's like, how in the hell in 5 seasons have we never seen that until now? I love that that's a thing. It's like, wait, what? And it's like, how much do you have here? He's like, billions. She's like, and how much is it going to be worth in a certain amount of years? She's telling him to kind of basically, the value of it, he puts it in the bank, which obviously he doesn't trust banks. So he's like, well, they're easy to rob. And it's like, well, what if someone try to rob this? He's like, let them try. But the fact is, it can appreciate in value over time and stuff like that. And she's saying like, oh my God, we could go back in time. We can do this. We can make a killing. We can buy New York and stuff like that before it gets really built and stuff like that. We can create Bitcoin. It's like, there you go. Using time travel, trying to make money, which is like, it shows that you're Mick's daughter. But also it's like, Mick should have thrown down the gauntlet to be like, we can't use time travel for evil like that. But the fact is that that's not what Mick brings up later on. Is proof that Mick doesn't care about that time travel, like, oh, consequences of changing history, blah blah blah, who gives a shit, like you shouldn't do it about benefiting yourself. He doesn't care about that. I also love the fact that to get away from the Hellhound, everyone kind of gets stuck, like Ava, Astra, Zari, Gary, Nate and Charlie are all stuck inside the force field, and I love it. And it's just like, Gary, can you move your hand like from there? And he's like, sorry. And he's like, Gary, you move your hand again. And Zari's like, actually, it's mine. And he's like, no, I mean, if you're comfortable, you can leave it there. It's not that big of a deal. Gary's like, can I put my hands in? It's like, shut up, Gary. I'm like, I love it. There's such a tight knit space like that. It's like, oh, just how uncomfortable they are. Astra manages to get away, but it's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't, the person who's very good at torture and stuff like that, because it's a hellhound, so she may know more about help with this situation, but she kind of tortures them by shrinking the space that they have to be free even more. It's like, yeah, there she is being torturous and stuff. But I love, it's like, Constantine made himself the target, and it's like, because I know you're here to help, you protect me, Sarah. And she's like, I'm literally blind. And it's like, yeah, but your other senses at work, but you can still hear. And the Hellhound attacks. That shit was sick. She ducked Constantine down, did a backflip, kicked it. I was like, yeah. I was like, that's super badass. I was like, that's sick. But luckily, Constantine was able to send it back because Astra gave him the name of the demon. So. But at the same time, I just love that all. Also, I think this helped out with Mick and his daughter, because it's like, well, for one, I didn't talk about it. Sarah finding out about everything. Wait, Astra's up here. Wait, Mick has a daughter. What have I missed? What's going on? To be fair, that was a thing at the time, but not everyone knew about him having a daughter. Gary managed to get the rings out of the toilet. Also, he has a new support animal. It's a bunny, and like Ava being like, "Oh, it's super cute." Actually, Sarah, you should totally see it. And the fact of the matter is, hopefully it's not from it. He's like, "No, I learned my lesson." The fact of the matter is, I got it from some suspicious merchant who was like, "Don't feed him after midnight." And then Ava's kind of looking like, because that's the thing. I don't know if Gary's joking, because obviously that's supposed to be a Gremlins reference. But I don't know whether that was him making a wink and nod to that, or was that him actually being like, wait, you don't know Gremlins, Gary? Wait, is this a Gremlin situation with this rabbit? We just kind of leave it at that, but I'm curious. It's like, it's one thing after another with you, Gary. It's like people who fumble a lot. It's just like, you are the all-star of fumbling because you literally brought a hellhound. Because even Sarah's like, yeah, it's okay. It controlled you, so it got you to bring him on the ship. And he's like, actually, no, it didn't. I was like, why didn't you just lie, Gary? But it's just like, that's because Gary's too pure-hearted to lie in that regard. But still, it's just like, you would have been better off lying. And it's just kind of like, okay, of course, you thought it was so cute, so you brought it over. Of course you would, Gary. So there's that with the situation. What I also thought was kind of a neat byproduct of this is Zari actually trying to bond with Astra, because it's like, oh, you're trying to manipulate me. She's like, it's fine. Like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, you're going to, like, I tried to, you helped out and everything, and I wasn't the bad guy. But, like, for her, it's like, she's just going to keep using the team, and it can use her. Or Zari's like, you could be a little more trustworthy and stuff like that. People wouldn't be suspicious of you. But she's like, no, like, we just keep using each other, and that's fine. But Zari's like, we could take another perspective. She's like, you know what, I'm going to take you a ride around the ship. And she's like, no, it's okay, it's fine. Like, I won't be here that long anyway. But it's like Zari tried to extend a hand of friendship, because Astra doesn't have friends. Everyone in hell, there are people that are using her. Even Lakisa, like, it's just like, that's just someone else that's using you, because it's like, oh, she wanted to make you one of her sisters. Sure, but does she really care about you, or is it just a means to an end to her? I mean, at the end of the day, it makes you wonder, does she even... I mean, hell, the fact is she's willing to turn her back on one of her actual sisters, that being Charlie, should be kind of proof of, like, how she... I mean, obviously she lies and manipulates people, but still. But I'm wondering, is that going to turn into something? Which is going to be interesting considering, like, potentially the Zari and Constantine thing, and obviously Constantine and Astra. So, like, almost that triangle of, like, that means there's at least two people who care about Astra. Like, I think that's going to be an interesting plot point going forward. Like, the whole, like, if Zari ends up becoming her friend and stuff like that. Once again, kind of showcasing, like, oh, like, bad people on this ship do kind of turn into best friends. Because, I mean, it's like, look what happened to Nora. Like, she was kind of a bad guy, but then, hey, she became good. Damien Dark, kind of in that same light. You can make the argument about Mick and Snart kind of ended up in that same vein as well. So it's like, yeah, bad guys, you know, who become good guys, you know, on the ship and everything, you know. I also love that thing where Mick was like, yeah, I shouldn't have got mad at you, but it's like, you know, you're basically, it's like, you're my kid and I'm trying to basically protect you. And he reads a letter because basically he's like, yeah, because committing crime is wrong. And the fact of the matter is then you get arrested and go to jail because of some, what was it, red leathered freak who moves so fast. I was like, I love that, which is so interesting because it's like, well, Barry, you know, got introduced to his daughter last season. You got introduced to your daughter this season. I mean, let's not forget Stein got introduced to his daughter in season 2. Was that? Yeah, it was season 2 because that was during the Heroes versus Alien crossover. Well, around that time, that was season 2. Regardless, like I said, tangent and all that. But him and his daughter are building kind of a better relationship, and her even going like, "Dad," I was like, "Yeah, you're making progress." But obviously, it's just like for him, he's like he made mistakes that he doesn't want her to kind of repeat. But for her, it's like she just thought like, "Hey, we finally found something to bond over." So, but obviously, that was kind of the wrong thing to bond over. But still. And he's like, well, I could take you back to your, just, you know, take you back to your mom. She's like, why? You stay out the week? He's like, wait, you want to stay? She's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah. Which I'm like, oh, will she potentially go on some time travel adventures with you? Sadly, but at the end of the episode, we learned that Sarah's condition can't be fixed by Gideon because her stuff is saying like, oh, there's nothing wrong with her. Because I'm assuming because this is more of a magical thing than more of a like, rather than like something science could fit, because it's more of a magical, like I guess it's a byproduct of like whatever it is that Sarah's whole deal is combined with basically seeing a guy. It did, like, I don't know, or maybe it's just like I said, it's like it took a while. And once again, why is it that she is able to see the future and stuff like that? Like, is it just because she is the paragon of destiny? Is there a little bit more? Because I've thrown out there's some thoughts of like maybe all this other stuff has kind of led to that. I feel like I might have referenced this last episode. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think because, like I said, Astra was like, oh, let me have a try. It's like, well, we might have our 3 new Sisters of Fate. It might be Charlie, Astra, and Sarah. They might all fill a role in becoming the new 3 Sisters of Fate. That might be the direction we go. Because I was thinking maybe this would be, like I said, I feel like I might have referenced this last episode. I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I feel like I might have referenced that. Like I said, I can't remember. But that could be what they potentially end up setting this up to be. Like Sarah's condition could be just kind of like set up for that potentially becoming a thing. I think that'd actually be pretty dope. I mean, once again, she's a paragon of destiny and just everything that she's kind of been through. Once again, you came back from the dead because of the... You think it has anything to do with the Lazarus pit? I mean, because you can still die, but it's like there's so much combined. Like, because she is the woman who's broken and changed her destiny, her fate, kind of destiny and fate in general. Once again, the whole like paradox situation in season 2 with the Spear of Destiny situation. There's that. There's a coming back from the Lazarus pit, being the paragon of destiny, now seeing a god. Like all this has to come together. There's also, I'm blanking on what wasn't she like, she had the totem of death? Wasn't that her totem when they were fighting the demon in season 3? Sorry. I don't know what to make, like, maybe, like I said, maybe all that has been leading her to this path, maybe. I don't know. I'd be really interested to kind of really get to know the ins and outs of, like, what that's all about. Maybe we'll get answers to it. Either way, I'd love to, ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good